On Hook's Newsmaker Saturday starts now.
Well, we're a couple of days now from the general election, and we're going to talk about the states of the races with a couple of guys later in the show. Mike O'Neil and what's your name? Chuck Coughlin, high ground, he'll be here. But first, we're going to talk about Prop 305. You're voting on this. Now, a lot of you I know have voted, but for the people in the home stretch who still are going to turn in their ballot on Tuesday, fill it in this weekend, or you're going to vote at the polls, we're going to talk about 305. This is the expansion of empowerment scholarship accounts to increase the number of eligible students, K through 12, with greater funding provided for low-income students. They would cap it at 30,000 students. Currently, 5,000 use it in Arizona. So these empowerment scholarship accounts, should they go forward, should it be a yes or a no? We're going to talk about it today. On the right is Dawn Penich-Thacker. She is no on 305. And Jenny Clark, who has kids in the program, is a yes on 305. Thank you both for being here. Let me start with you, Dawn. What is the best argument for no on increasing these? Do we call them vouchers? What do we call them?
Most people refer to them as vouchers because it's just easier than the long name that lobbyists came up with. There's a lot of reasons, but the two main reasons to vote no on Prop 305 is that the program lacks accountability. These are our tax dollars, hundreds of millions of them, that we're loading onto debit cards, handing out to parents, and then we have no way of knowing exactly how those dollars are spent or getting them back if we find out that they were spent fraudulently or misused. There was a headline just earlier this week.
Oh yeah, we're going to get into that.
Okay, great.
Does it hurt the traditional public schools, I'm talking about district schools, if money is being taken out of the system for these accounts?
And that's the other main argument, is that currently the ESA program is costing schools about $60 million every single year. If this expansion goes through with Prop 305, that number will be closer to $250 million every single year taken out of our public district schools and our charter schools. So that is a huge hit to schools that are already starving for resources, and this would basically devastate budgets across the state.
Jenny, you've got two kids in the program?
Yes, so I have kids in the program, and two of my kids are qualifying under the special needs category for their dyslexia and dysgraphia. That's correct.
Okay. You are a yes.
I am
Give me
a
your
yes.
best case for yes
well,
on 305.
I'm a yes because right now in Arizona, the way that we fund our children in our schools is that the money follows the child, right? Your child goes to a district school, the money follows the child. Same thing if the child goes to a charter school. With the Empowerment Scholarship account, the exact same thing happens, except there's a savings to the taxpayer. And that's because only 90% of the Arizona dollars, not the federal local dollars, those stay at the school, 90% of the Arizona dollars fund this scholarship and save the taxpayers money on ESA. So parents get educational choice and opportunity for their children, and the taxpayers save. According to JLBC, if yes, Prop 305...
Joint Legislative Budget
Yeah,
Committee.
if Prop 305...
Nonpartisan.
Nonpartisan.
Okay.
If Prop 305 goes through, the savings is estimated to be around $11 million to the general fund. So it's really a win-win when you look at parents having choice and opportunity and taxpayers saving money.
You're saying that if it passes, there's better accountability than there currently is, which gets back to your point about the abuses on the card. We saw people paying for makeup and using the money for other things. You think it's rife with abuse?
Absolutely. In fact, that figure of $700,000 of fraud just this year came from the Auditor General. So this is our government watchdogs themselves saying that there is no oversight, that the staff is unprepared to take care of the existing program. And just today, another headline came out of the Department of Education itself calling Prop 305, quote, untenable, and that, quote, if it passes, it will be bad for students and bad for our state. That is the Department of Education themselves saying, we can't do this now. We really can't do this if Prop 305 passes.
For you, it's all about choice, right?
It's all about choice, but it's also about the money and the savings. Unfortunately, the one thing that Don failed to mention is that the Auditor General found that there's less than 1% of misspending in the ESA program. I'd like to see another government program that has that low level of misspending. The other thing that she failed
So it's made a headline, but you say it doesn't, it's not as big of a deal as it's been made out to
Well,
be.
any type of misspending is a problem, but less than 1% is incredible for a government program. The other thing Don failed to mention was that Save Our Schools were the ones that stopped Senate Bill 1431 from going into effect. That moves the financial management of the program to the Department of Revenue. That's what we want. That's what a yes vote does. That program would already be at the Department of Revenue for the past year if Save Our Schools hadn't stopped Senate Bill 1431 from going into effect.
Clear something up for me, and
Sure.
whoever wants to take it. You've got this quirky situation where there are people who like choice, and they want actually there to be more choice, not less. They're a no vote because they don't want to cap it at 30,000. They want it to be more people able to take advantage of this. That's kind of a weird thing in this whole debate.
Absolutely, and that's why I say regardless of where you fall, you actually want to vote no, because if you think that tax dollars should not be going to private religious schools, into homeschooling situations, then you want to vote no, because that's exactly what happens. Hundreds of millions more tax dollars.
Are you
into
against choice,
pockets.
or is it protecting the traditional public school?
No, absolutely not. My children don't go to the school in our neighborhood. They go to the school that we chose. Every single charter
Happens to be a public school.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But the other
That's
issue
open
is
enrollment.
you want to vote no if you think that every child should be able to get a voucher. You want to vote no because there is a cap on Prop 305. So if you think everyone should get exactly this kind of choice, there are 1 million students in Arizona right now. This cap is at 30,000.
1.1 million. Do you believe it's a threat to the public school model? This kind of thing?
The way that Prop 305 is written is a threat to every family's situation, whether they're choosing public, charter, or the existing ESAs.
Why exactly?
Because it's taking resources out of the schools that 95% of parents are choosing. But there's also a large segment of current ESA users who are saying we are opposed to Prop 305 because it disenfranchises the very same special needs students that it was made for.
Okay, now Jenny, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I'm shaking my head. I disagree
strongly.
because the way that school funding is being presented, that money is going to be, supposedly taking funds out of the school district, it's completely inaccurate and it's misleading. That's the bottom line here. The Empowerment Scholarship account allows the money to follow the child, which it always has, and it saves taxpayers. Also, they're talking about current families such as myself and trying to use special needs families to fit their agenda, to fit their narrative. We will not be missing out with Prop 305. Our families are there. They're on the program. We're happy on the program. There's room for more families to exercise, there's room for more families to exercise their opportunity and their choice in this state. Families want that, and that's what we want. And we're asking for a half of 1% over the next 4 years. That's a drop in the bucket when you look at a million kids.
Personalize this for me for a minute.
Sure.
Where would your family have been without this opportunity?
Well, my children probably would have been struggling even more than they are right now. We've been on ESA just for a couple of months. Our entire school district had 0 programs for our kids. I hear from parents. I hear from parents all.
And this is in Scottsdale.
This is in Scottsdale. I hear from parents all the time. The school district just wasn't able to meet the unique and diverse needs of my child.
So what would you have done? What would have happened?
I don't know what we would have done. We probably would have tried to find some sort of private therapist at great expense to ourselves for our children, but it was a huge process. ESA comes in, helps take care of all that therapy that the school district couldn't provide. And we're just so thankful for that. And we don't need these programs at every school, but we need opportunity for the families that need it for their kids.
So Dawn, what's wrong with that?
There's a lot wrong with that. Let's just take it down to the special needs children. Everyone agrees that they may need different circumstances. Prop 305 caps ESAs at 30,000. Today in Arizona, there are 100,000 children with special needs in our public and charter schools. So by simple math, Prop 305 says 70,000 special needs children will never get this opportunity. That doesn't sound like a good choice for me.
Something that's been confusing to me, if right now we could have 30,000 kids in this, why are we only at 5,000 right now?
Because a lot of families cannot afford to make up all the difference that an ESA doesn't
So
cover.
the ESA won't cover the whole thing?
Absolutely not.
No, so what she's doing is mixing up the numbers here. We have 100,000 kids who are special needs. Those families have been eligible for the ESA program for the past 7 years. Those families are a beautiful example of school choice in Arizona. The program has grown very slowly and incrementally over the past 7 years. The special needs families like myself that need those funds, they're utilizing the program right now. And many of those other families that she mentioned, they're in the public school system, and they're happy in the public school system.
Okay.
There's room for more kids.
We're going to take a quick break here on
Sure.
Newsmaker Sunday. We're going to talk about the state of the races from governor to U.S. Senate with Mike O'Neil and Chuck Coughlin in a little bit on the program. But we're going to return to this debate on 305. This is the expansion of empowerment scholarship accounts. Is it a yes or a no? And when we come back, are the families benefiting? Wealthy families, not families you traditionally think should be taking advantage of this. We're going to talk about that when we return on Newsmaker Saturday. Back in a moment. Okay, a couple of minutes left to debate Prop 305. This would allow parents to take public funding intended to educate their children in K through 12 public schools and use it for private school tuition or other educational options. Don Penich-Thacker on the right, Jenny Clark. Don is a no on Prop 305. Jenny is a yes on 305 and has 2 kids in the program. I raised a question before the break. Are wealthy families the ones who are using this more than maybe the lower income folks who maybe need it even more?
Yeah. So the Arizona Republic has done this study 3 years in a row, and every single year have found that 70% of ESA, Empowerment Scholarship users, are in the affluent tax bracket.
Why is that?
Only 4 to 7% of low-income families use it, and that's because you have to be able to make up tens of thousands of dollars of personal money to even use the ESA voucher. Here's an example. The average ESA voucher is about $5,000, loaded onto a debit card and given to the family. Tuition at some of the private schools here in Phoenix is over $17,000 a year. So that means that any family is still going to make up $12,000 per child per year using only personal transportation, buying uniforms, buying books. You have to be wealthy to even be able to send a couple kids through that system. And that's why low-income families, this is not actually a choice for them. It's another choice for affluent families.
Okay, go ahead, Jenny.
Yeah, so basically that's completely untrue, and there is no such study. It's completely made up, which is unfortunate that we're being so misleading.
The Arizona Republic has done this study.
What the Arizona Republic did is show that families that are on the program right now that have special needs, they are still leaving even A and B districts, okay? So there's a huge assumption here about what that means. That means
A and B meaning top performing
A and B
districts.
districts, yes, and that's because for whatever reason, those schools weren't working for their special needs children. So it's a huge leap to say that just because those special needs families are leaving an A and B district, that somehow those families are wealthy. That is just simply not the case, and that's where the misleading information comes from the other side.
Let's, we've got about a minute left.
Yes.
I'm going to give you each kind of a closing argument on 305, Prop 305. And Don, I'll start with you. What would you like folks to think about if they're still filling out a ballot or going to the polls on Tuesday? Why are you a no?
I want folks to think about responsible use of our tax dollars. We have this small program that has eligibility requirements on it. It has some oversight, but not enough. The Auditor General, the Department of Education, everyone who has studied this has said there's not enough accountability and oversight of our tax dollars. So if that's true, but we want to improve this, why would we expand it before we improve it?
Okay. And Jenny, final word. Why are you a yes, and why should people vote yes on 305?
Well, we trust families. We trust families because they know their kids better than anybody, and they know when their child might need an educational environment that isn't the public school system. We want those families to have a choice. We also want to save taxpayers, which is what a yes vote does. We also want increased accountability and transparency. That's what voting yes on Prop 305 does as well.
Okay, Jenny, Don, thank you very much, and get out and vote. When we come back, what is going to happen on Tuesday? 2 guys who are pretty smart, Mike O'Neil, Chuck Coughlin, to handicap the state of the races as we head into Election Tuesday. Back in a moment on Newsmaker Saturday. Thank you. Okay, back on Newsmaker Saturday. What I know we're going to prognosticate here for a minute. Mike O'Neil, O'Neil Associates, and Chuck Coughlin on the right of your screen. High ground. We're going to talk about what you think is going to happen Tuesday. Let's take the big one, McSally Cinema. We'll put up the slate, let you take a look. Poll came out, predictive this week, had Cinema trailing now by 7 points.
Yeah.
Do you buy that, Chuck?
No, it's a bad poll.
It's a bad poll.
It's a bad poll. It has a 12-point Republican participation advantage that Mike put in the poll. And today, the latest number from the Secretary of State's office.
Mike Noble.
Right. The latest number of the Secretary of State's office was an 8.5% Republican advantage. So he's 4 points off on Republican advantage.
Okay, so even with that, let's say that he got that advantage wrong. Is the basic finding right that McSally's leading?
I think it's within the margin of error. We did a live caller poll over the weekend of 400 voters for high ground and high efficacy known voters, and we had McSally up by a point. But the trend line, what's happening, and we gave Republicans a 10-point advantage in our poll, and what's happening as the ballots come in is that margin is shrinking. Today, as of today, as I said, it's down to 8.6.
And you think it's going to shrink as we get toward Election Day?
I do.
Mike, what do you think?
I think if you take a look at the average of all the polls out there, you probably get a more stable indication than you do
but
by
some
anyone.
of the polling goes back 3-4 months.
No, I'm talking about within the last week or two.
Okay, that's all we're talking about.
I'm not talking about the ancient stuff. You look at it. There was another one. I think it was NBC. Was +7 Cinema. You know, this margin of error means something. No, well, no. They're all within a margin of error, and that's the high end. And the other one you cited was the low end. If you take the average of all of them, you're somewhere very, very close to a dead heat.
Well,
so what will decide it, guys?
People are going to actually have to vote. I don't think this is so close that no poll can predict a winner. Unless something were to change radically, they're going to be counting ballots late into election evening.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to even know. We're not going to know on election night.
No kidding.
No, because people will walk in. John, there'll be 100,000 plus early ballots that'll be turned into the poll on election night.
Okay, this is what I was going to ask you. Sometimes we get the early ballot now is somewhere between 70 and 75% of the total universe of votes out there.
But I think he's referring to what I call the late earlies. You get the early votes. That gets counted, gets released at 8 p.m.
It does.
Then you count all the election day stuff. And then you have this residual of what I call late earlies.
My point is, if you've got 75% of the universe, can you extrapolate and say, okay, I think we probably got our number here?
Yeah, on a lot of races.
And it usually holds.
On a lot of races, you can. But in a race that's 2 or 3 points apart,
you can't.
No.
Yeah, if you're up 10 points, you can take that to the bank.
So Carrie Lake and I should not make any calls based on anything within maybe 3, 4, 5 points.
Exactly.
It could change.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you for that. That was important. I don't want to make any mistakes. Governor is, in your view, over. I'll start with you on this one.
I agree. Doug Ducey, you look at the margin in all the polls on that. You can disagree a little bit about the exact margin, but for all intents and purposes,
Chuck, as Al McCoy would say, we can put that one in the deep freeze.
No kidding. Yeah. I mean, if you're David Garcia,
how did that happen?
Yes.
Well, it happened because you have great examples in Cinema and Garcia's campaign. Garcia's chosen to run a very progressive income tax increase, anti-ICE.
Had Bernie Sanders come in.
Bernie left. While Cinema has done the, hey, look at me, it's all about me, and I'm not associated with anything. I'm an Arizonan. And she's narrated
and a moderate.
Well, that's the way she's portrayed herself, as a moderate. And that's what, she's coming across as, I don't really like Democrats either, And so she's making it very difficult.
And now, Dad, she's credible, too, in doing that. She's voted with Donald Trump more than just about any Democrat.
60% of the time. That's right.
More than any Democrat, not with the most extreme Republicans, but she's up there.
Let's go to Attorney General. I'm curious about this race. Mark Brnovich, January Contreras. We don't know, for people not in the political world, a lot of people don't know a lot about January Contreras. This is kind of a new name on the scene, but she's a Janet Napolitano acolyte, right? Is this actually, could this be competitive, the Attorney General race?
This is more in the middle ground. I would be surprised if Brnovich is beaten, but it's not beyond the realm of possibility.
I think the 127 money soften it?
That's the only question. If that hit harder, if Brnovich goes down, that will be why.
Okay, if you don't know what I'm referring to, it's the 127, the proposition on renewable energy, which we debated here a couple of weeks ago. And in that ad that tells you to vote yes on it, it also says to vote no on Mark Brnovich. So it was a soft ad on, it was a hard ad on 127 and kind of a, I guess, another hard ad rolled into one to hit Brnovich.
Yeah, look where the money goes, you know, and money goes where there is a prospect of it making a difference. That's why national Democratic money stopped going to Garcia and started going to Katie Hobbs for Secretary of State. Get to that. She thinks she has a chance. They think she has a chance.
We had Mark up by 8 points over the weekend. Mark will win this race. It'll be done principally also because 127, which we may get to, is going to be beaten soundly. It will be defeated badly in this election cycle.
You jumped ahead of me here. All right, let's go to the Secretary of State office. 3 times in the last 25 years, our Secretary of State has become governor. This is a big deal, and a race that doesn't get a lot of attention. This is our de facto lieutenant governor, one of these people. Who's going to win this race, Chuck?
I think this one is equally within the margin. This is a close race. Both are non-incumbents. Unlike Brnovich, Mark is an incumbent. He's well-known. People have voted for him before. Neither of these office holders have run statewide before. It's
Katie Hobbs, better known because she's
state senator,
but only one legislative district.
But this is the cycle where it may be the woman thing, where a young woman is running against an older Republican male. That's a
white male.
A white male. Is there any other kind of the Republican Party, John?
It's become a toxic label, and so we're all guilty of something, I guess.
Right.
How do you see it?
I agree. This is very, very close. This is probably one of the best Democratic prospects to win a statewide race. Katie Hobbs is viable, a little bit more visibly, but again, only one legislative district, so you don't want to understate that. But she's been in elected office, and I think her opponent has the problem of, you know, who's he?
But you've got one more that's probably razor thin, and that is Kathy Hoffman and Frank Riggs for Superintendent of Public Instruction. We'll put up the slate. What do you make of that race?
Again, that one's pretty close. Both, newcomers. She's a newcomer. The Democratic candidate's a newcomer.
Frank Riggs, an ex-California
congressman. That's interesting that Arizona Republicans are embracing California. You don't see that every day, do you?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point.
You know, that's an office that was in this state traditionally the one Democratic bastion. You know, we elected Republicans to things like treasurer to manage our money and Democrats to school our kids.
Yeah, I think of the late Carolyn Warner, who was a delightful,
lost her recently.
She was a delightful person.
We had this in the same poll we had where McSally was up. We had Hoffman up by 1.5 points. So it's also a very close race. I tend to think that in this cycle, even though Frank Riggs has run a terrific campaign and he's talked as a progressive Republican would want to talk on the issues like 305 that you were just talking about. It just seems like one of these cycles where, you know, teacher, female, Democrat, back to the superintendent's office.
And if there's any year where a Democrat is going to win, it will be this year.
Is there still, I mean, there is still a Republican advantage for registration in Arizona. It goes Republican, Independent, Democrat.
Correct.
They're sliced. Republicans have the biggest share. It's not by a lot, a few 100,000 votes, right?
Yes.
Independent, right behind.
That's what we were looking at when we were talking about participation advantage. Yes, we have a registration advantage.
Let me ask you, are you guys having trouble getting Republicans to respond to you in polling?
No. No, we're
having trouble getting everybody to respond.
Okay, you don't feel like there's some backdoor animus toward pollsters from Republicans who are like, I'm going to hold on and not talk to these guys because I want to screw them over on Election Day. Is some of that going on?
Well, I believe that exists in the Trump world. There is an undercount. There's an undercount because we typically see it in undecideds, and we can look back in the crosstabs and say, who are those undecideds?
Yeah.
And if they're older white males, we pretty much know they're not telling us.
I think there's an undercurrent of, from the Trump folks, we're going to stick it to the pollster.
Yeah.
We want to thwart these guys.
Yeah.
Are you sensing this?
I think it's easy to overstate it. There may be something like that there, here, and there.
Did I overstate it?
I think so.
A member of the media overstating
rumbling.
something, Mike? Please, are we serious about this?
You know, we've heard that I've listened to that for decades. You know, people don't respond and all that, and haven't found a whole. But I'll tell you one thing that's done in polling now wasn't done 20, 30 years ago. Used to start with a random sample and you trusted the randomness and you got enough of a diversity that that's what you went with. Now you get what you get.
Okay, 20 seconds. Blue wave on Tuesday. You want to start, Mike?
Absolutely. The only question is how big.
No kidding.
Yes,
Blue wave.
absolutely.
Chuck?
Yeah, there'll be increased Democratic participation. How much we'll see on Election Day.
Okay, guys, appreciate it. And we will see you. We're going to kind of break it down next week, how it all turned out. We'll see you on